It began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, a shimmering distortion in the familiar blue canvas above, like a heatwave mirage but far more unsettling. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd gathered for the annual summer picnic. What was initially dismissed as a trick of the light soon became impossible to ignore. Children pointed, their laughter dying in their throats as they stared wide-eyed at the sky. Adults exchanged uneasy glances, their conversations halting mid-sentence. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The sense of foreboding grew, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be a day of joy and relaxation. The distortion grew, widening into a jagged fissure that split the sky from horizon to horizon. It was as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. A low groan, like the earth itself crying out in pain, echoed across the land. The sound was both haunting and heart-wrenching, reverberating through the bones of those who heard it. Panic surged through the crowd. People scrambled, desperate to escape, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. The sky was falling, the ground trembled, buildings groaned and swayed, their foundations struggling to hold firm against the unnatural forces at play. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, sending shivers down spines and raising goosebumps on exposed flesh. It felt as though the very atmosphere was charged with a malevolent force. This was not a natural phenomenon. This was something far more sinister, far more terrifying. The sky, once a symbol of freedom and endless possibility, had become a harbinger of doom. The world as they knew it was unraveling, and there was no telling what horrors lay ahead. From the gaping wound in the heavens, a grotesque rain began to fall. Not life-giving water, but something monstrous, something alien. Bulbous, pulsating sacs, dripping with viscous slime, plummeted to earth, bursting upon impact. Screams filled the air as the putrid contents splattered across the terrified faces of those unfortunate enough to be caught in the downpour. The stench was unbearable, a nauseating mix of rotting flesh and sulfur. People retched, choking on the foul air. Still, the sky continued to bleed its horrors upon the earth. This was no meteor shower, no act of God. This was an invasion. The sacs, it turned out, were merely harbingers, precursors to the true horror that awaited humanity. As the sky continued to rip open, monstrous shapes began to descend. They were vaguely humanoid in form, but twisted, grotesque mockeries of life. Their skin was a sickly, translucent green, stretched taut over bulging muscles and pulsating organs. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence, cold and calculating. They moved with a swift, predatory grace that spoke of countless hunts, countless victories, and they had come for Earth. Their arrival was heralded by screams. The creatures descended upon the fleeing crowds, their long, razor-sharp claws tearing through flesh and bone with sickening ease. Blood splattered, painting the streets crimson. The air grew thick with the coppery tang of iron and the primal stench of fear. There was no mercy in their attack, no hesitation. They were killing machines, driven by an insatiable hunger that could only be sated by blood and suffering. The screams of the dying were music to their ears, the terror in the eyes of their victims a source of perverse pleasure. Section 5. Resistance is futile. The military, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. Tanks rumbled through the streets, their cannons firing blindly into the sky. Fighter jets screamed overhead, launching missiles that exploded harmlessly against the creatures' tough hides. It was a futile effort. The creatures were too fast, too strong, too many. They moved through the city like a plague, leaving a trail of death and destruction in their wake. Hope, it seemed, was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. Section 6. Desperate measures. As the sun began its final descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the ravaged city, the remnants of what once was a bustling metropolis now lay in ruins. The skeletal remains of buildings stood as silent witnesses to the devastation, their shadows stretching ominously across the desolate streets. Amidst this desolation, a small group of survivors huddled together in the ruins of a convenience store. The store, once a place of mundane daily life, now served as a fragile sanctuary against the chaos outside. They were a motley crew, brought together by fate and united by fear. Each one of them carried their own stories of loss and survival, their paths converging in this moment of desperation. There was John, the store owner, a burly man with a shotgun and a haunted look in his eyes. His once confident demeanor was now replaced with a grim determination to protect those around him. Sarah, a young doctor, desperately trying to tend to the wounded with dwindling supplies. Her hands moved with practiced precision, but the worry in her eyes betrayed the uncertainty of their situation. And little Emily, a child who had witnessed horrors no child should ever see, clutching a tattered teddy bear for comfort. Her wide eyes reflected the trauma of the world around her, yet she clung to the small semblance of normalcy the bear provided. The bear, once a symbol of innocence and play, was now a lifeline in a world turned upside down. They were all that was left of their world, their lives shattered by the events of the day. The memories of their loved ones and the life they once knew haunted them, but they found solace in each other's company. But even in the face of unimaginable horror, the human spirit refused to be extinguished. They had to survive. The will to live, to fight for a future, burned brightly within them, even as the world around them crumbled. They had to find a way to fight back. Plans were whispered in the dark, strategies formed in the shadows. Each member of the group brought their own strengths to the table, and together, they forged a fragile hope. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they were determined to reclaim their world, one step at a time. As Section 7, A Glimmer of Hope. As darkness fell, a strange silence descended upon the city. The once bustling streets were now empty, the only sound being the distant hum of a flickering streetlight. The air was thick with tension, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The creatures, their initial bloodlust sated, had seemingly vanished into the night. But the survivors knew better than to let their guard down. They had seen too much, lost too many, to believe in such a simple reprieve. The survivors emerged from their hiding places, their faces etched with exhaustion and a cautious hope. Each step they took was measured, every shadow a potential threat. They moved in silence, communicating with nods and glances, their trust in each other the only thing keeping them sane. "Do you think they're gone?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her eyes darted around, searching the darkness for any sign of movement. "Don't get your hopes up, Doc," John replied, his grip tight on his shotgun. He had seen what these creatures were capable of, and he wasn't about to let his guard down now. "Those things, they're like roaches. For everyone you see, there's 100 more hiding in the shadows," he continued, his voice grim. "For everyone you see, there's 100 more hiding in the shadows." The darkness was their ally, and they used it to their advantage, striking from the shadows when least expected. He was right to be cautious. The survivors had learned the hard way that complacency could be deadly. Every corner, every alleyway was a potential ambush. The silence was deceptive, a predator biding its time before striking again. The city, once a place of safety and community, had become a hunting ground, and strike they would, with a ferocity that would make their initial assault seem like child's play. The survivors knew that this was just the beginning, and that the real battle was yet to come. They steeled themselves, ready to face whatever horrors the night would bring. Section 8. False Dawn. The first rays of dawn painted the sky a sickly yellow, revealing the true extent of the carnage. Buildings lay in ruins, their facades ripped open like the chest cavities of slaughtered giants. The streets were littered with bodies, twisted and broken, their eyes staring vacantly at the heavens. The air hung heavy with the stench of death. The survivors, their numbers dwindled by the night's horrors, knew that time was running out. They had to escape the city, find somewhere safe before the creatures returned. But where could they go? Where could they possibly hide from a threat that had fallen from the sky itself? Section 9. The Earth Bleeds. As they fled through the desolate streets, a low rumble shook the ground. Cracks snaked across the asphalt, widening into gaping chasms that swallowed cars and buildings whole. The earth itself was bleeding, spewing forth a noxious black smoke that choked the air and stung their eyes. From the depths of these infernal fissures, a new horror emerged. Tentacled abominations, their bodies a writhing mass of muscle and slime, erupted from the ground, their maws agape, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The earth itself had turned against them. Section 10. No escape. The survivors scattered, their flight now a desperate scramble for survival. John, his shotgun blazing, bought them precious seconds, his face a mask of grim determination. Sarah, her medical bag abandoned, sprinted for her life, her heart pounding in her chest. And little Emily, her teddy bear clutched tightly in her hand, stumbled through the chaos, her eyes wide with terror. But there was no escape. The creatures were everywhere, their numbers seemingly endless. They swarmed through the streets, their cries echoing through the ruined city, a chorus of death that heralded the end of all things. Section 11. The end is nigh. The ground continued to tremble, the sky to rain down its horrors. Humanity, once masters of their domain, were now prey, hunted by nightmares made flesh. The end, it seemed, was nigh. But even in the face of oblivion, a spark of defiance remained. Hidden deep within the bowels of the earth, a group of scientists worked feverishly, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors displaying terrifying images of the invaders. They held the key to humanity's survival, a weapon of unimaginable power, but would it be enough?